The entire tennis community held its breath, questioning if the Spanish prodigy had just committed professional suicide by walking away from the mentor who sculpted him into a legend. Juan Carlos was out, and Melbourne Park was set to be the crucible where this massive gamble would either pay off or crash and burn. Well, the verdict is finally in, and the young superstar has made his stance crystal clear. Following a stunning victory over Djokovic down under, he has permanently severed ties with the past to forge a new path with fresh leadership. This seismic shift went down back in December, merely a few weeks before the first serve in Australia. After 7 years and 6 major titles, the dynamic duo that seemed destined for eternity, Alcaraz and Ferrero, shocked everyone by calling it quits. Fans and pundits alike were left reeling, screaming that this was a catastrophe and that he was torching his own legacy. The consensus was, you simply do not axe the architect of your rise to number one. Meanwhile, a heartbroken Ferrero, who viewed the kid as his fourth son, was left picking up the pieces. He confessed a deep desire to stay on, admitting that seeing his protege take the court alone would be absolute torture. Make no mistake, this wasn't a happy, conscious uncoupling. It was a unilateral dismissal, leaving the veteran coach out in the cold. The narrative was that the Spaniard had blundered massively, believing you cannot simply swap out the man who found you as a child and engineered every single one of your triumphs. Critics argued that kind of alchemy is one of a kind, and winning without his original master would be a pipe dream. But as the tournament kicked off, Alcaraz stepped onto the court, flanked by a mystery man who was a total stranger to the public. Together, they proceeded to obliterate every skeptic and silence every whisper, suggesting he had lost his way. It wasn't merely a win, it was a massacre, tearing through the first 6 rounds without dropping a single set. He appeared lighter, radiating a cool confidence and command we hadn't seen from him in quite some time. Defeating Novak Djokovic to become the youngest player in history to seal a career Grand Slam wasn't just a trophy lift, it was pure redemption. It demonstrated that the young king understands his own destiny better than the pundits, confirming that tough calls often yield the best rewards. It showed the world that legendary status is not tethered to a single partnership or individual. Enter Samuel Lopez, a figure largely unknown to the masses before this fortnight began. Lacking the star power and former world #1 status of his predecessor, critics deemed him woefully underqualified to guide a talent like Alcaraz. Mats Wilander threw Roger Federer's name in the hat, while others clamored for icons like Andy Murray or John McEnroe to step in. Everyone agreed he required a heavyweight mentor, a champion who had walked the path and lifted the trophies themselves. Yet, the Spaniard tuned out the noise and ignored every bit of that conventional wisdom. He doubled down on Lopez, offering an explanation that sheds light on the true essence of effective mentorship. He noted that Samu often flies under the radar simply because he lacks that shiny pedigree of a former top-ranking pro. During the event, the champion remarked that while many famous names were tossed around, dismissing his choice felt unjust. He boldly claimed that Samu stands as perhaps the premier technical mind in the entire sport. The man earns his stripes by offering insights that a former superstar might never be able to deliver. That specific point is crucial, the idea that playing greatness does not always translate to coaching genius. Essentially, holding a trophy does not guarantee you know how to teach someone else to win one. The ability to communicate, analyze mechanics, and unlock potential outweighs a dusty resume of past glories, a fact the tournament results confirmed. Lopez navigated his charge through 7 grueling matches with flawless precision, rarely conceding an inch. Every strategy hit the mark, and the tweaks made between rounds were nothing short of brilliant. Any gap in personal accolades was bridged by sheer tactical mastery, but Lopez wasn't the only fresh face in the box. In another twist that stunned onlookers, the star promoted his own brother, Alvaro, to a legitimate coaching position. This wasn't just moral support. Alvaro was there to grind, travel, and strategize as a core member of the team. While Alvaro never reached the dizzying heights of his sibling, he was a solid competitor on the Spanish club circuit. He understood tennis, but his real superpower was his intimate knowledge of the man holding the racket. He grasped his brother's mental state and emotional triggers in a way no hired gun ever could, having been by his side for years. As the champion put it, his brother knows their rhythm, understands the tour's grind, and has a lifetime of tennis knowledge to boot. Blending Lopez's tactical brain with Alvaro's emotional intelligence forged a unique and potent alliance. It was a support system tailored specifically to the player's needs, ignoring what the rulebook says a champion's box should look like. The results were instant and undeniable. Anyone watching him in Melbourne could feel the shift in energy. Gone was the stress often seen under his old mentor, replaced by a looser, more liberated demeanor on the court. The chatter in his corner had shifted frequencies. The whole vibe just felt more organic, you know? Not to say Ferrero was incompetent, far from it. The guy is a legend. 6 Grand Slams and a world #1 ranking don't lie. That is a Hall of Fame run by any standard. But hey, even the best fires eventually burn down to embers. Even when things are great, sometimes your soul craves a different flavor. Carlos spotted that expiration date before anyone else. He realized that dragging it out would be agony compared to ripping off the Band-Aid. He was hungry for a fresh tone, a different tactical rhythm to level up his game. That is wisdom you almost never see in a kid his age. Most 22-year-olds wouldn't have the introspection to even notice that shift, let alone act on it. They would cling to the safety blanket long after it stopped keeping them warm. Carlos chose the rocky path, staring down the skeptics. Taking the crown in Melbourne is the ultimate mic drop. It proves once and for all he wasn't just Ferrero's puppet. He wasn't some Frankenstein's monster who would power down without the doctor. The man is the architect of his own destiny, fully capable of winning regardless of who sits in the box. Honestly, this hits harder than a safe win with the old guard would have. Staying put would have been the easy road. Shaking the foundation and still dominating? That displays a terrifying level of self-assurance for a youngster. You could hear Lopez's mindset loud and clear mid-tournament. He kept it simple. It is just a game. Nobody dies if we lose, though obviously, we came to win, Lopez told the press. That is why he chooses words that lower the heart rate. Relax. That is the magic spell. No extra weight on the shoulders. He builds a sanctuary where Carlos can swing freely, stripped of that crushing burden of expectation. You don't need a shelf full of trophies to teach that skill. Look at how the ex-legends usually try to run things. They treat their protégés like clones, expecting them to react exactly how they did back in the day. They are busy coaching a ghost of their past selves instead of the human standing in front of them. Lopez avoids that trap because he wasn't a superstar. His entire career has been about decoding others, not remembering his own highlight reel. You could see the lab work paying off from the very first ball they hit in the off-season. His service game in Melbourne was transformed sharper, heavier, and impossible to predict. That is the fruit of nitty-gritty mechanics, not reminiscing about the good old days. Remember, Lopez won Coach of the Year in 2025. The insiders knew he was the real deal. We aren't talking about some rookie getting thrown into the deep end without a life vest. This man has been grinding in the shadows for years, finally stepping into the spotlight he earned. Ferrero has been classy about watching his student fly solo, but you can feel the sting. He confessed it's a bitter pill. I am thrilled he is winning without dropping a set, he says. But it is a complicated emotional cocktail. You can be thrilled your kid is winning and still heartbroken you aren't the one driving the car. He wasn't done. In his mind, the movie still had a few scenes left to film. Getting cut loose hurts, but seeing Carlos thrive immediately, that burns. Yet for the player, the clock struck midnight at the perfect moment. Your instincts scream for a pivot long before your brain can explain the logic. Those 7 years were the stuff of legend. They smashed ceilings nobody knew existed. However, the book was closed. Trying to write more on that page would have just ruined the story. The gamble was massive. If he had crashed out of Melbourne, the vultures would have picked his bones clean. Every dropped point would have been pinned on the breakup. The headlines would have screamed disaster, claiming he torpedoed his own legacy. Instead, he soared. He crushed it. And the story flipped upside down. He is the maverick who bet on himself and cashed in big time. It beefs up his mythology rather than chipping away at it. Look at how this usually plays out in other sports. Divorce, a longtime mentor, and you are usually looking at one of two endings. You either crash and burn, inviting the "I told you so" crowd, or you rise like a phoenix. What makes Carlos's tale so wild is that he pulled the trigger right before the biggest stage. Most athletes would hesitate to shake up their inner circle right before a major tournament, preferring to wait until the dust settles. Yet, Carlos and his camp realized that dragging the Ferrero partnership through the Australian Open would be far more toxic than ripping off the Band-Aid and betting it all on Samuel Lopez. It was a high-stakes gamble that could have blown up in their faces, but instead, they struck gold. That move speaks volumes about Alcaraz's intuition and his team's razor-sharp grasp of exactly what his game required. Naturally, securing the career Grand Slam grabs all the front-page glory, and it absolutely deserves the spotlight. Becoming the youngest legend to conquer all 4 majors is historic, but seizing the Melbourne crown immediately after such a massive staff shakeup is arguably even more mind-blowing psychologically, because Alcaraz had to tune out a deafening chorus of skeptics, critics, and armchair experts demanding he pick a different path. He had to double down on his own gut instincts while the rest of the world screamed that he was making a huge mistake. Then came the hard part: stepping onto the court and executing flawless tennis, stripped of the safety net his longtime mentor used to provide. That requires a level of psychological iron that transcends a simple forehand or backhand. This is the raw essence of a champion's mindset: unwavering faith in your own roadmap, even when everyone else insists you are lost. Seeing Lopez honored during the trophy presentation meant the world to Carlos, who admitted he had no clue that was part of the protocol. The young star remarked on the Melbourne tradition of tipping the hat to the mastermind behind the player. He called it a brilliant gesture, finally shining a light on the coach because, let's face it, this is not a solo mission. Catching a glimpse of him up there brought me pure joy, knowing Samuel has ground away for a lifetime just to reach this peak. A lifetime of grinding for this single instant. That is the Samuel Lopez story. Sharpening his tactical mind to elite levels despite never competing on those courts himself, then finally grabbing his shot with Alcaraz and showing the world he fits right in. This victory in Australia was not solely about Carlos hoisting the cup. It was total validation for Lopez, demonstrating once and for all that you do not need a shelf full of trophies to mold a legend. It proves that tactical brilliance outweighs past athletic glory and that evaluating a mentor based on their old playing stats totally misses the mark on what makes a coach effective. As for the future, Alcaraz's team structure remains adaptable. Carlos has signaled that while Lopez will anchor the major events, there might be stops where the prodigy flies solo. With a grin, Alcaraz noted that blueprints are meant to be redrawn, embracing fluidity as a core pillar of his fresh strategy. Rather than clinging to a stiff hierarchy where a specific coach is glued to his side, he is pivoting based on the unique demands of each competition. This is savvy, next-generation career navigation, placing a premium on outcomes rather than old-school customs. The scoreboard does not lie. 7 majors by age 22, the career Grand Slam secured, and the world #1 ranking locked down. And he pulled it all off while steering through a massive staff shakeup that critics predicted would send his career off a cliff. Carlos Alcaraz did more than just conquer Melbourne. He demonstrated that true greatness is not tethered to a single partnership or mentor. He showed that betting on your own vision beats following the herd every single time. He revealed that the most painful transitions are often the keys to unlocking a higher tier of dominance, and he made it look like a walk in the park, the mark of a real icon. They turned the impossible into the inevitable. But what is your take? Did Carlos make the smart play with his coaching swap? Should he have ridden it out with Ferrero? Or is this trophy the ultimate proof that Lopez was the missing piece? Does a coach's playing history actually matter as much as we pretend? Sound off in the comments. Is this unnatural maturity from Alcaraz or just a stroke of lucky timing? Smash that subscribe button because this dynamic duo is just getting started, and we will be tracking every twist and turn. Punch that like button if you believe the guts to make tough calls is exactly what divides the legends from the rest of the pack. Occasionally, the voice in your head knows a lot more than the so-called gurus. The ripple effects of this triumph stretch far beyond a single athlete or one trophy presentation. Alcaraz's win down under with Lopez shatters the bedrock assumptions about what constitutes a top-tier coach in the pro game. For ages, the fashion has been to recruit retired legends to the players' box. Think Murray guiding Djokovic, or the constant rumors of Federer stepping in, and Wielander advocating for slam winners to mentor the rising stars. On paper, the theory holds water. Who better to lead a winner than someone who has walked that path and hoisted the hardware? Yet, Carlos is flipping that script, proving that such thinking is flawed, or at the very least, missing the big picture. Lopez's rise demonstrates that tactical wizardry, clear communication, and a grip on modern tennis dynamics often trump a dust-gathering trophy cabinet. It highlights that the talent needed to dominate on the court and the wisdom needed to teach from the sidelines are two completely different beasts. This shift might just rewrite the playbook on how future stars choose the architects of their careers. Rather than blindly chasing retired legends, teams are starting to bet on the builders, the architects who can actually forge champions without needing a shiny playing resume of their own. It is a total rewire of the tennis mindset. Plus, the chemistry between Lopez and Alcaraz spotlights just how critical the personality mesh really is. Some athletes need a father figure in the box. Others just want a hitting buddy. Then there are those who strictly want a mechanic to fix the gears and stay out of the way. Carlos realized Lopez brought the specific energy he needed for this chapter, something Ferrero had run out of. That is scary self-awareness for a kid his age. Most pros would cling to the devil they know rather than rolling the dice on a new personality match. But Carlos gets that being comfortable is the enemy of greatness. He knows you have to burn the bridge to cross the river sometimes. In hindsight, pulling the plug on Ferrero when he did was actually genius timing. He refused to let a dying partnership bleed into another season. No way did he want that awkward talk mid-year when wins and losses cloud the brain. Severing ties in December, even right before the Australian Open, gave them both a blank slate to march forward. Was it savage? Absolutely. Could they have softened the blow with a few more chats? Probably. But that sharp cut stopped the slow, toxic rot that eventually poisons everything. Sometimes a clean break, no matter how much it stings, is the ultimate kindness. Ferrero is already pivoting, coaching golfer Angel Ayora on the mental game. That is a massive left turn, stepping completely out of the tennis world. It hints that the breakup with Carlos cut way deeper than he ever admitted to the cameras. Like he needed a whole new universe to heal from watching his protege win without him. But there are no villains here. Ferrero poured 7 years into that boy. He built a monster and deserves the applause, but seasons change. Needs shift. The playbook for a 15-year-old rarely fits a 22-year-old. Admitting the ride is over takes serious guts. Carlos has been nothing but class when talking about his ex-mentor. He praises what Juan Carlos built, sure, but he does not shy away from the truth. He needed a fresh spark. That mix of gratitude and raw honesty, that is how grown men handle business. Compare that to the dumpster fires we usually see: lawsuits, trash talk, and years of icy silence. Carlos and Ferrero managed to pull the chute without crashing into the mud. That is pure maturity, even through the hurt. Now, all eyes are on the clock with Lopez. Is this another 5-year marriage, or will Carlos keep swapping parts to stay ahead of the curve? The vibe is very adapt or die. He seems ready to pivot on a dime, constantly tweaking the formula rather than signing in blood. That fluidity might be his secret weapon, especially since the sport never stands still. The blueprint for 2026 might be garbage by 2030. Spotting the expiration date on a strategy and pulling the trigger without fear is a competitive edge sharper than any serve. The Australian Open also stamped Alvaro's passport as a legitimate coach. Mixing blood and business is usually a nightmare. You get the nepotism whispers and doubts about whether they are actually qualified or just lucky. But Alvaro silenced the room. The guy was instrumental in Carlos chasing down history. That blessed hands nickname Carlos dropped after Alvaro's barber session before the 2025 US Open is already folklore. Now we might be hearing blessed mind, because he is proving he has tactical chops, not just brotherly love. That Netflix doc, My Way, caught a raw glimpse of Alvaro, pulling Carlos out of the dark mental holes, proving that emotional anchor is non-negotiable. You need a guy who sees the human, not just the athlete, someone to ground you when the sky falls and crack a joke when the air gets too thick. Lopez brings the sniper-like technical precision. Alvaro brings the soul and the deep personal read. Combined, they are feeding Carlos the exact cocktail he needs to dominate. It is definitely not your textbook coaching squad. It is a bespoke machine designed for one unique warrior. And man, is it humming. The proof is in the pudding down under. The swagger, the ice-cold veins under pressure, the mid-match shifts, it all screams that this team is firing on all cylinders. The burning question now is whether the rest of the tour will try to replicate this blueprint. Are we about to see a shift where technical wizards get hired over tennis legends? Will we start seeing more parents and siblings taking charge in the player's box? Is the old-school manual on mentorship about to be shredded? Most likely, we are looking at a mix of everything. History shows that when a maverick breaks the rules and wins big, the world sits up and takes notes. Alcaraz's triumph with this oddball setup basically signs a permission slip for every other pro to get creative with their own team decisions. And honestly, that is great for the game. Fresh ideas in how we train athletes can only push the sport forward. If tomorrow's icons are built by rethinking the player-coach dynamic, then the entire ecosystem evolves for the better. Make no mistake, Carlos Alcaraz did a lot more than just lift a trophy in Melbourne. He stamped his seal of approval on a radical new way of operating at the absolute peak of the sport. He demonstrated that the road to immortality has many lanes and can be traveled in 1,000 different ways. He proved that your inner voice outweighs the noise of the crowd. And he pulled this off at just 22, sealing a career Grand Slam and locking in legendary status. We aren't just talking about hitting a ball over a net here. That represents a depth of wisdom most people don't find until midlife. The real headline is how he flipped the script on what we define as a gamble versus a safe bet. Sticking with Ferrero? That was the comfortable path. the path of least resistance. The gamble was blowing it all up to start fresh. But Carlos grasped a hard truth. The most dangerous move is stagnating in a winning situation that has secretly stopped working for you. That is a paradox that eludes most of us. We are wired to cling to what works, terrified to rock the boat unless the waves force us to. He refused to play by those rules. He realized that good enough isn't the same as right for right now. Just because you won yesterday doesn't mean you will win tomorrow with the same hand. By pulling the trigger on that tough call and silencing the doubters, he has empowered every young gun to listen to their own gut. He proved you do not need to wait for the wheels to fall off before you switch cars. Realizing you need a fresh spark and actually chasing it is the ultimate power move, not a sign of frailty. Sure, the record books will say the Australian Open was where he became the youngest ever to complete the set. But the real story is that he declared his brilliance isn't tied to any single mentor or partnership. He is the one holding the pen, writing his own legacy, and swapping out the cast whenever the plot demands it. That right there is the golden nugget in this whole drama. It is not about whether Lopez beats Ferrero or the other way around. It is that Alcaraz knew his own soul, backed his own play even when the world looked at him sideways, proving that guts and self-knowledge are just as lethal as a wicked forehand. So, what is your verdict? Was ditching the old guard a stroke of genius, or did he just dodge a bullet with this win? And be honest, does a fancy coaching resume actually matter as much as we pretend it does? Sound off in the comments below. Is this kid a wise old soul in a 20-something's body, or did he just get lucky with the timing? Smash that subscribe button because this duo is just warming up, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Tap like if you believe that making the brutal calls is exactly what separates the legends from the rest of the pack. At the end of the day, betting on yourself beats listening to the so-called gurus every single time. Trusting your gut is the only game that matters.